Picture this, 1932, Western Australia. The country is grappling with the Great Depression, but for the farmers in the Campion district, there's an even bigger problem. A feathery, long-legged, and surprisingly formidable problem. We're talking about 20,000 emus. Yes, you heard that right, 20,000 emus. These giant flightless birds had migrated from the interior, discovered the farmers' freshly planted wheat fields, and thought they'd stumbled upon the world's biggest all-you-can-eat buffet. They weren't just eating the crops, they were trampling them, breaking down fences, and generally causing chaos. The farmers, many of them ex-soldiers from World War I, were desperate. They pleaded for help, and the government, in a move that would go down in history, decided to declare war. This wasn't a metaphorical war. This was a literal, boots-on-the-ground military operation. The Minister of Defence, Sir George Pearce, dispatched a small contingent from the Royal Australian Artillery. The force consisted of Major G.P.W. Meredith, Sergeant S. McMurray, and Gunner J. O'Halloran. Their weapons? 2 state-of-the-art Lewis machine guns and 10,000 rounds of ammunition. On paper, it looked like a ridiculously one-sided fight. A modern military armed with machine guns versus a bunch of big birds. What could possibly go wrong? Well, as it turns out, everything. The first engagement began on November 2nd. The soldiers spotted a flock of about 50 emus. This was it, the moment of truth. They set up the machine guns, took aim, and the guns jammed. By the time they fixed the issue, the emus, who clearly weren't waiting around for an encore, had scattered in all directions. Only a handful of birds were taken down. Major Meredith noted in his report that the emus seemed to have an uncanny ability to absorb bullets and just keep running. It was a less than glorious start to the Great Emu War. 2 days later, the soldiers tried a new tactic. They planned an ambush near a local dam where over 1,000 emus were spotted heading for a drink. This time, they would be ready. They waited patiently for the birds to get close. The gunners opened fire. For a moment, it seemed to be working. But then, something incredible happened. The huge flock didn't panic and run away in a single group. Instead, they split into countless small units, running in every direction, making it impossible for the machine gunners to track them effectively. Major Meredith was stunned. He reportedly said, "If we had a military division with the bullet-carrying capacity of these birds, it would face any army in the world. They can face machine guns with the invulnerability of tanks." The emus, it seemed, had developed their own guerrilla warfare tactics. The military's frustration grew. In one particularly comical attempt, they mounted a Lewis gun onto a truck, hoping to chase the emus down. It was a disaster. The ride was so bumpy that the gunner couldn't get a clear shot. Meanwhile, the emus, capable of running up to 50 kilometers per hour, easily outpaced the vehicle, all while dodging the sporadic and ineffective gunfire. At one point, an emu even got tangled in the truck's steering gear, causing the driver to swerve and crash through a fence. The truck was out of action, and the emus were once again victorious. The whole operation was turning into a farce. After about a week of this feathered fiasco, the media got wind of the story. Headlines across Australia and even the world began mocking the military's struggle. One British conservationist quipped that the emus were fighting a bush war and were past masters of that art. The public found the whole situation hilarious. Here was the mighty Australian military being outsmarted and outmaneuvered by a bunch of birds. The press had a field day, depicting the emus as cunning, organized soldiers and the Australian army as bumbling fools. The political pressure became immense. By November 8th, after firing nearly 2,500 rounds of ammunition for a laughably small number of confirmed kills, estimates range from 50 to a few hundred, Major Meredith and his men were recalled. The first campaign of the Great Emu War had ended. The emus had won. Officially, the military operation was a complete and utter failure. The birds continued to raid the farms, seemingly unfazed. The farmers' problems were far from over. In fact, the emu attacks reportedly became even more bold after the military left. But the story doesn't quite end there. The emu problem persisted, and the farmers, still desperate, requested military assistance again. Unbelievably, the government agreed to a second attempt later that month. Major Meredith returned to the field, this time with a bit more success. They had learned from their mistakes and adopted better tactics. In the second campaign, which lasted until mid-December, the military managed to take down nearly 1,000 emus. However, even with this improved result, it barely made a dent in the massive emu population. When the operation finally concluded, the official report claimed 986 kills using 9,160 rounds. That's exactly 10 rounds per kill. Not exactly a model of efficiency. Ultimately, the government decided that military intervention was not the answer. They realized it was far more cost-effective to offer a bounty system, encouraging farmers and hunters to deal with the emus themselves. This proved to be a much more successful long-term solution. Over the next few years, tens of thousands of bounties were claimed, and the emu threat to agriculture was finally brought under control. The Great Emu War was officially over, not with a bang, but with a bounty slip. So what can we learn from this bizarre chapter of history? First, never underestimate your opponent, even if they're a giant flightless bird. The emus proved to be surprisingly resilient, intelligent, and masters of evasive maneuvers. Second, it's a perfect example of how even the most well-intentioned plans can go spectacularly wrong. The image of soldiers with machine guns being outrun and outsmarted by emus is a hilarious reminder that reality is often stranger and funnier than fiction. It's a story that has become a beloved piece of Australian folklore, a tale of human hubris versus the surprising power of nature. It's a reminder that sometimes the best solution isn't a machine gun, but a little bit of humility and a different approach. The Great Emu War remains one of history's most amusing and strangest conflicts, a war where the victors were tall, feathered, and very, very fast. Thanks for sticking around to hear this incredible true story. If you enjoy weird and wonderful tales from history like this one, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you do not miss our next video. We've got plenty more bizarre stories to share with you. Let us know in the comments what you think. Who do you think really won the war? See you next time.